So a little bit about, as I said, the Brampton Flight Centre, then a little bit about the aviation industry, where we are, what the statistics are looking like in terms of people that are wanting to learn to fly, what the business is looking like, and we'll talk about the things that we need if you're going to join our professional program: an introductory flight, aviation medical, licensing requirements, and then a lot, which is what I think you really want to hear about, is the career opportunities. We'll also get into a little bit about the administration of the course, and then also our partners at AeroCourse, who do a lot of the advanced training for the students that turn them basically from being a private pilot into a professional ready to go into the cockpit of an airline. With us tonight, we've got a number of key people from Brampton. We've got Scott Chaco. He is our chief flight instructor. We've got Kathy Stewart. She's our manager of flight training administration. And we've got Sydney DeHoop, who is our campus administrator. And from AeroCourse, we've got Rick Stevens. He's the founder and the president of AeroCourse. We've got Jessica Enke, who is the manager of advanced training, and Francis Yanuzzi, who's an AeroCourse instructor. So, as I said, we've got a lot to get through here. So right now, I'd like to turn it over to Kathy Stewart.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm sorry that I don't have a camera this evening. One of the most important things, obviously, that you're all thinking about is, will I have a job once I finish all of my training? So back in November, Transport Canada released these statistics about the shortage that we're going to be experiencing in the next 5 years. So anywhere from 7,600 to 14,500 is what they are predicting. And if you can see on the right side of the chart, the flight training units in Canada over the last 10 years have only graduated 1,500 pilots. So there's definitely a shortage, and we will circle back to employment opportunities a little later in the presentation. All right, so a little bit about the Brampton Flight Centre. We've been training pilots for 78 years, and we're very fortunate to have anywhere from 35 to 40 flight instructors on staff at any given time. 2 of those are flight test examiners, which makes it very convenient for our students when it's time to schedule that flight test. Our fleet, as most of you probably know, consists of 172s. Some of those have glass, some of them have the steam gauges, and our Piper Seminoles also have the glass. At our facility, we also offer 2 simulators, and then those that are in the IATPL program, they will go on to a full motion advanced simulator at CAE. It's a level D, and our partners at AeroCourse will explain a little bit more into that in depth later in the presentation. Okay, so we are a not-for-profit, and we do own all of the land here. We maintain the land as well as our aircraft. We do our own engine overhauls as well, which is a very unique service. We were previously referred to as a private career college, and that recently changed to Ontario Career College. So those that are vocational can and do receive a diploma. We also have some partnerships with airlines. We have Jazz, Porter, and most recently Sunwing. This is a great potential for our students that are graduating if they'd like to go direct entry to the airlines. So we have many that have gone on to domestic and international. And as well at our facility, there's a lot of networking opportunities. You can see by the list here that we have on the screen, if there's anything of interest to you, you can just search that on our website or through one of the search engines to find out a little bit more about them if you wanted to become an active member.
Scott, are you ready to go?
If we lost Scott, I could carry on a little bit.
Sure, yeah. Why don't we go ahead with that? I can carry
sure.
on as well. Why don't you start us off, Kathy?
Okay. What have we got coming up next year?
On
The
we could talk about the introductory flight.
For sure. So this is a great opportunity for students that are interested in pursuing being a pilot as a career. You can come out and do an intro flight. It's going to give you some good exposure of what you could expect while you're in the training environment. It's typically about a 20-minute flight. The flight instructor will obviously be showing you all the requirements, the paperwork, how to get dispatched. You'll go out to the aircraft, do a walk around. You'll go up into the aircraft, and if it's permitted, you may even have control of the aircraft at some point. Gives you an idea of what to expect. So you're looking at approximately $150 plus HST, and that can be booked through our homepage. This is definitely part of the admissions package for those of you that are looking at the IATPL or the college. Okay, so the next item is very important. So category 1, aviation medical, is something that you have to hold if you wish to be a commercial pilot. Anyone who's interested in flying at all, we strongly encourage you to get that appointment now. Transport Canada is still very much behind. Don't think they've ever caught up since the pandemic. So that's really important. If you just search civil aviation medical examiner, you can probably find one pretty close to where you live. There's a lot in the Greater Toronto area. You should be able to hopefully get one close enough to you. And the price for that can range anywhere from $150 to $400. It's not regulated, so just give them a call, ask them the price, and if that's in your budget, go ahead and book it. And in order to start the IATPL or the college program, you would need that medical physically in hand to start on day 1.
Kathy, I've been unmuted, so I can take over.
Oh, there you are.
Sorry about that. I was trying to unmute that entire time. My apologies, everybody. But I'll
That-
take over for pilot career opportunities.
Okay.
Awesome. Yes. Sorry, that's my bad, guys. I changed the setting by accident that you weren't able to.
No.
All right, let's go ahead.
So just to recap what Kathy was saying, I can't stress it enough. If you are interested in either taking up a career in aviation or just something fun to do, you need to tackle that medical as soon as possible. It can't be stressed enough, to be perfectly honest with you. It's something that we don't control at our flight school. It has to be done through you and the doctor. And just because of the delays, again, please try to take care of it as soon as possible. Now, what's on the screen right now, the commercial pilot license requirements. So this is a traditional path of licensing through aviation. The first thing that a candidate would get is something called their private pilot's license. It's just that you're a private pilot. You can only fly with yourself. Obviously, that's an oversimplification. But to work professionally as a pilot, the first license that you would need to hold is something called the commercial pilot's license. That can only be done after you hold the private. And then on top of that, you would add what are called ratings onto your license. This just gives you more privileges to, use. You can see the two that we've listed there on the screen include the multi-engine rating, which is just that, flying an aircraft with more than one engine, and the instrument rating, which is flying an aircraft in inclement weather, so in cloud and areas of reduced visibility, etc. The traditional path through aviation would be getting a private license, getting a commercial license, those ratings as well, finding a job somewhere, and then getting enough hours to qualify for the airline transport pilot's license, which is the top level of licensing in Canada. And it's what airlines are going to want to see when you're either applying or, of course, working for them. Now, something that's going to be touched on later on in the program is at BFC, at the Brampton Flight Centre, we effectively have a fast track to that license, which not only allows you to skip a couple stages in terms of the overall licensing process, but allows you certain career opportunities, traditionally what would be earlier compared to someone who went through aviation previously. So we're just going to touch on a couple here. Obviously, aviation is a diverse and complex sector, but we're just going to touch on a couple that we see, a lot of our students, work in terms of aviation. So first one we're going to talk about is a flight instructor. A flight instructor is a traditional first job for most pilots. It's a little bit backwards in that those with not a ton of experience teach those with no experience, but that's the way aviation works, at least for the time being. I'm a little bit biased. I like this as a first career opportunity for most instructors. You can usually stay local, make your own schedule. There's a lot of pros to it. However, most people do not want to fly small 172s for their entire career, which is perfectly understandable. Now, if we keep going up this ladder in terms of size, the next one that we have is air taxi operations. It's usually flying to remote communities, usually in aircraft that are larger than your 172 or your 182, but we're still not talking, large airliners at this point. It's very demanding in terms of what is being required by the pilot, not only for flying in terms of difficult situations, but also, loading the aircraft, doing your own calculations, whatever it may be. One step up from that would be commuter operations. Again, just getting into a larger aircraft, still not necessarily servicing major hubs, more remote communities. One step up from that would be regional airlines, which is usually aircraft with up to roughly 70 people. Again, we're getting into larger communities at this point. Examples of this would be your Air Canada Jazz, Porter, WestJet Encore. And then one step on top of that would be the major airlines that we're all familiar with, your Air Canada, WestJet, your Sunwings, whatever it may be. So it's not that all pilots would necessarily work in all of those sectors in aviation traditionally. However, again, going through our program, our ATPL program, which is going to be touched on later on, you would at least have the later opportunities much earlier in your career. And next, I think I'm passing it back off to Kathy. I'll mute myself again.
Okay. So not everyone approaches their training the same way. So at the Brampton Flight Centre, we do offer self-paced, and that's exactly what it is. You're training at your own pace. A lot of those students are either working full-time or part-time, or they may be in post-secondary education, and so they're just doing their flight training around those schedules. We then offer 2 structured vocational programs which offer a diploma. That's our IATPL and the college. So for the self-paced, everyone, again, would be starting with the PPL if you haven't already achieved that. We have our ground school, which is approximately 130 hours. Everything that we do here at the school is in person. And we start the ground school. There's a new start date every month. I believe it's a 16-week cycle. For those that are moving on to the commercial, you have the option of adding on the multi or the IFR to that. And of course, the program length is going to vary depending on your availability. However, most people can achieve the PPL, the CPL, and maybe even the multi-IFR in approximately 2 years.
Okay, and I'm going to talk to you today about our professional diploma programs. So Brampton Flight Centre offers 2 professional diploma programs in addition to the self-paced program that Kathy was talking about. So the major beneficial program we offer would be the IATPL program, which is called the Integrated Airline Transport Pilot License Diploma Program, referred to as the IATPL. And we also offer what's called the college program, also known as the Professional Pilot Training Program. So these are both 2 full-time programs that can take you from 0 hours of experience all the way up to being fully commercially licensed as a Canadian pilot. So the IATPL program is a 20-month program, whereas the college is a 14-month program, and they both run concurrently, and they would commence in July of each year. So both programs will take you from 0 hours of experience to commercially licensed in under 2 years. And from the college program, the graduates can take several different paths as a licensed pilot to get to the career they wish. However, these graduates of the IATPL program, however, will be qualified to sit in the cockpit of a 737 at an airline such as Sunwing, which is a partnership we have, which I will expand on further. So to discuss the IATPL and college program further, both programs you would graduate with your private pilot license, your commercial pilot license, night rating, multi-engine, and multi-IFR rating. So both programs include over 200 hours of flight training experience. You can always build additional hours in the program by completing additional rental flights. However, we do quote the program training at 200 hours. The program also includes approximately 500 hours of ground school instruction. So this would include the topics of PPL, CPL, and IFR ground school, which is delivered by our partners AeroCourse, which they will discuss further in the presentation, as well as the IATPL program includes an additional 250 hours plus of advanced airline ground school instruction, which prepares students for a career in the airline. So the first portion of this is preparing for your written exams to become an airline licensed pilot. So these are two major exams called the SAMRA and SARON exam. I won't go into too much depth about these just because Jessica's an expert on this and she'll be covering this further in the presentation. But the major perk of this IATPL program is the fact that our students get early access to write these SAMRA and SARON examinations, where industry standard is 750 hours of experience to write this, minimum experience, whereas our students have early access to write this because they are completing an integrated program. So that's really what sets the IATPL program apart from the college, is the fact that you are receiving this advanced airline training, which certifies you to become an airline pilot at an accelerated rate. And like I said before, it qualifies you to work for an airline directly upon graduation through our partnerships with Sunwing, Jazz, as well as Porter. Some of the advanced airline and advanced airline ground school for both programs includes industry tours. So we have partnerships with NAV Canada, Air Canada Dispatch Center, Chartwright, which is a private aircraft owner, Porter Airlines, and many more. So we have unique partnerships that aren't open to the public. So you get sort of behind the scenes access tours, which is great for our student. Advanced airline also includes, advanced ground school also includes IFR ground school, like I said, delivered by our partners at AeroCourse. And the unique part about these professional diploma programs that sets them apart from the self-paced is the fact that we give you job and career preparation training, which includes resume development. We teach you how to find jobs in aviation, how to submit applications, as well as we have resume development classes, as well as mock interviews where we actually take people who are completing interviews in the industry, such as Porter, and they complete a mock interview with our students. And for the IATPL program, like I was discussing before, we have the SAMRA and SARON preparation, which is the first portion of the advanced ground school, as well as the multi-crew coordination training, which includes the Level D simulator experience that Kathy talked about at the beginning, which is really the exciting part of the portion, which we complete at CAE. So for both the professional diploma programs, you start flight training on day one of the program. So this is what sets us apart from so many other integrated programs. Is a lot of them you need to start the ground before you can even get into the cockpit of the aircraft. But with our program, you start flight training on day one. Of course, this is weather permitting, but you do have aircraft reservations 6 to 7 days per week, starting at day one of the program. So a typical day in the program includes a flight sometime in the morning before your afternoon ground school. These can be scheduled by myself months in advance. And like I mentioned, they would be up to 6 to 7 days per week, depending on what portion of the training you are in. Students are also recommended to study between their flights and ground school. So we do recommend using our study spaces we have available on campus to make the most of your time here while you're in this accelerated program. Like I said, we do encourage flying up to 7 days a week. Obviously, this would be weather permitting. We want you to be booked multiple days per week because as we've seen with the weather recently, we can't guarantee good weather. So we want you to have an aircraft reservation for when the weather allows. So that's the perk of these two accelerated diploma programs, is the fact that you get booking priority. This is a very intensive and full-time commitment program. We do not recommend that students in this program have a part-time job just because of the commitment and accelerated nature of this program. So I'm going to turn it over to Jessica now if you would like to get further into the IATPL program.
All right, thank you, Sydney. Yeah, so at this point, we're going to get into a little bit more detail on the IATPL specifically. I'll just do a quick reintroduction with our photos here. So again, my name's Jessica. I'm here representing AeroCourse, and I manage the advanced portion of the integrated ATPL program at BFC. And here with me from AeroCourse are Rick Stevens, the AeroCourse president, as well as Francis Yanuzzi, our lead IATPL instructor. And you can see us all here pictured on the screen. We are all commercial pilots. I fly the Boeing 767 at Air Canada. Rick recently retired off the Airbus A330 from Air Canada. And Francis flies the Boeing 737 at Sunwing. Again, you can see us all here in various aircraft, and we all have many years of valuable experience that we're able to pass on to our students through the program, which is something quite unique that I'll touch on again later. So a little bit about the background of AeroCourse. We have been leaders in advanced aviation training for over 30 years. We've conducted thousands of ground school seminars for pilots in that time. And as I mentioned, all of our instructors are highly experienced professional pilots. So a lot of knowledge to pass on to our students. And our mission is to provide students with the required knowledge to become safety-oriented professional pilots. And we can double underline that safety-oriented professional pilots, because that's what we're here to create out of our students. All right, so a bit of history now on the IATPL program itself. So about 10 years ago, building on the success of Brampton Flight Centre's Flight College program, BFC and AeroCourse partnered together to create a joint training program to provide an integrated airline transport pilot license, or the IATPL. And you'll probably have already noticed that aviation has a lot of acronyms. These are just the first at the beginnings of your career. So IATPL is one that we'll continue to use through the rest of the presentation. So the IATPL, as was mentioned before, is a very structured and intensive program. It's going to take students from 0 flight hours to airline-ready IATPL graduates. BFC will provide the flight training for the private and commercial licenses, and they'll also do the training for the multi-engine and IFR ratings that are added to those licenses. Excuse me. And once this is completed, that's where AeroCourse comes in to provide the advanced training portion of the IATPL program. And that's what I'm going to detail about today. Okay, so I want to take a look at why this type of program is necessary. So you can click forward just a little bit, Sydney. So traditionally, as Scott was mentioning, we see pilots go through initial flight training, which includes the commercial multi-IFR. Then they'll start building some flight time, eventually get hired at an airline after many hours of experience. These days, though, things are a little bit different. Pilots are moving in much more rapidly into the airlines, and there is a training gap between completing that initial flight training and successfully completing the airline training that's required when you first start at an airline. And so that's where the IATPL comes in. So you can click forward, Sydney. To bridge that gap, that's what we're here to do with the IATPL, and ensure that students can not only succeed, but we want them to excel at that airline level when they're hired at their first job, because they don't actually have the experience in time to do that these days. Things are moving much more quickly from the initial phase to the airline phase. And one thing that has been published recently is that IATPL graduates significantly outperform their colleagues on initial airline courses. And this was published by Transport Canada. So we saw some other stats by TC earlier about the pilot shortage. They also recently reported that IATPL grads passed their first initial course with no additional training. That's what we want. We want students to, again, to not only succeed, but excel. So with no additional training at a rate of around 96%, while their colleagues pass at rates between 40 and 70%, depending on the type of training they received. So as Kathy mentioned earlier, there are different routes that you can take, but the IATPL graduates are the most successful when it comes to their first airline job. So on top of that, IATPL graduates are getting into the airlines a lot faster. It takes them on average 2.5 to 3 years, or even less with the types of direct entry programs that our IATPL graduates have access to, versus about 3.5 to up to 7 years in other types of training programs. So in an industry where seniority is hugely, hugely important, this is a really significant, this time issue. So the course is structured around what we call the components of effective flight crew performance. And so if you want to click forward, Sydney, so we have several different components. Knowledge of airline operational procedures, advanced aircraft systems, crew procedures like standard operating procedures or SOPs, another acronym for you, and checklists, multi-crew or CRM skills, crew resource management skills, and of course, personal proficiency, all of which provide what we'll call layers of safety. So I want to introduce this now, but we'll go back to it later on and talk about it in a little more detail. So when students graduate from the IATPL program, they will have an IATPL license, advanced airline operational knowledge, as well as multi-crew cooperation or MCC skills. And the advanced portion of the program consists of 2 phases of training. So Sydney mentioned this earlier. The first phase will take a look at airline flight operations and do the airline transport pilot license or ATPL ground school training. This is where the 2 exams that were mentioned earlier will be written. And then the second phase is the multi-crew cooperation or MCC training. That's where we get into that level D simulator training on the 737. So this type of program provides much greater safety standards for young pilots through higher learning. We talk about things that not a lot of other programs touch on. Flight operations procedures, aircraft systems for large aircraft, so that when students go into their first airline ground school, they're not completely overwhelmed. Advanced communications and avionics, as well as advanced environmental factors or weather issues. So let's get into a little more detail about the course syllabus for phase 1. So again, phase 1 is our airline flight operations and ATPL ground school, where at the end of phase 1, we're going to have both of those 2 Transport Canada exams written, the SAMRA and SARON. So those are the 2 exams on top of the instrument flight rules exam that are required for the airline transport pilot license. So that includes about 31 days of instruction, around 220 hours of instruction. And again, those 2 Transport Canada written exams completed and passed. So the course syllabus, if you want to click forward a little bit, Sydney, for phase 1 includes detailed instruction on air carrier procedures and policies, Canadian aviation regulations, and with the Canadian aviation regulations, we also include the regulations for commercial operations with a lot of hands-on scenario-based exercises that really help students to improve their decision-making skills and see what a situation would be like in real life, how to actually use the regulations on a day-to-day basis. And that's where the experience that our instructors have as airline pilots comes in really handy. You can click forward, Sydney. We also include instruction on advanced communications, navigation, and autoflight. We get into great detail on modern aircraft avionics, including flight management systems and warning systems. Weather is a huge part of flying, so we go into great detail with environmental factors, including advanced meteorology, high-level flight operations, and operations in hazardous conditions. We talk about advanced theory of flight, as well as flight hazards and how to handle them. And then, of course, we also talk about advanced aircraft systems. So systems for medium to large aircraft in a generic way. And then we get into more detailed specific systems with the 737 later on. And so that comes along in phase 2. So in phase 2, we are looking at multi-crew cooperation training, or MCC training. This includes intensive preparatory classroom instruction, about 16 days, as well as practical training of 9 days, plus a whole bunch of observation sessions, which again, give the students as much exposure to the 737 as possible. Practical training is conducted using state-of-the-art simulator technology, as has already been mentioned, and I've touched on this already, but we are using the Boeing 737-800NG aircraft for this training. So it teaches the students to operate as co-pilots on complex multi-engine, multi-crew aircraft, and it teaches trainees crew resource management, or CRM skills. And I do want to mention that the 737 is a great aircraft to have experience on, as it is the most widely used aircraft type in the entire world. So a really, really good one to have some knowledge on. So with that overview, I just want to take a quick look at how the course was developed by looking at some statistics. So as you can see from the graph that's on the screen now, both aircraft flight hours and aircraft departures have increased substantially over the past 50 years, as can be expected. And we can clip forward. But if we look at the same period with regards to aircraft accidents, we see that despite the increase in traffic, the number of accidents has actually steadily decreased, which is a great thing because of both technological innovation as well as learning from previous incidents and accidents. But of course, the causes of the accidents we do see are changing. Instead of seeing a large proportion of accidents that are caused by technical failures, like we would have seen many years ago, we're seeing the largest proportion of accidents these days caused by other factors that aren't related to the technical status of the aircraft. So if we can click forward, thank you. And we can see that kind of swap between the accident causes between technical and non-technical causes represented again here. They've almost completely flipped in the 80-20 percentages. So if we take a closer look, we can see that the technical issues are the cause of only about 16, so even less than 20% of accidents, but non-technical issues are the cause of about 84%. But if we click forward and take a look at what's traditionally taught in aviation programs, you can see that students spend a whopping 98% of their time on technical items and only 2% on non-technical. So what we've done is design our advanced syllabus to actually reflect the statistics with more focus on the non-technical items, or I should say additional focus. Of course, we're quite focused on the technical items as well, but we want to take a look at those non-technical issues as well. Okay, so we've taken a look at the detailed course syllabus for phase 1. So let's take a look at the course syllabus for phase 2. So in that realm of non-technical issues, we take a look at advanced human factors and multi-crew operations. We do a review of aviation psychology, and then we really get into crew resource management, or CRM, and its application in practical situations. So I've mentioned CRM a couple times so far. What that means is effectively using all of our available resources to assure a safe and efficient operation. And of course, it's a huge part of daily life as an airline pilot. So we spend several days on CRM. And these training items are not only covered in class, but will continue to be addressed again and again as students progress through to the simulator training. And then, of course, in the simulator training, it's something that we're addressing in each session. Then we have our Boeing 737 ground school course, approximately 42 hours spent on Boeing 737 systems, avionics, and the flight management system. We also get into in-depth detail of the standard operating procedures, or SOPs, briefings, and pre-simulator practice based on Sunwing procedures. And that pre-simulator practice is really important because we want to make sure that students go into the actual simulator well prepared so they get the most out of the time in that simulator. So we do as much practice as we possibly can in the classroom in what's called a paper trainer. So we have a setup that where the flight deck is shown in posters, so we can kind of get the movements and the procedures down before moving into the actual simulator. All right, and once the ground school is complete, we move into that simulator portion of the training. So that includes, again, 9 4-hour sessions for a total of 36 hours. And those 4-hour sessions are broken down into two 2-hour flight legs per session, plus instructor briefings on either end. So these are also really important in making sure that the students get the most out of the 4 hours in the actual simulator. We have a 1.5-hour pre-flight briefing going over all of the things that will be looked at in the actual simulator, and then a half-an-hour debrief as well to talk about what went well and what can be improved on in the next session. So we do utilize the most advanced flight simulation technology at CAE, and that's a training facility here in Toronto. It's a facility that actually many airlines use. CAE specializes in aviation training. They are a very well-established company. They have simulator facilities all over the world. We have been partners with them from the beginning. You can click forward, Sydney, thanks. So each of the sessions is what's called a line-oriented flight training session, and that is scripted as an actual flight in real time between 2 airports. And it's an effective and realistic style of training that's actually used in at the airline. So that's quite important in that students learn how to use the procedures that they've learned in the classroom in an actual flight under the same time constraints that we would see on an actual flight. 5 of these sessions that we talked about are conducted in an advanced Boeing 737 flight training device, another acronym for you, and 4 sessions in the Boeing 737 full flight simulator, which you can see pictured here on the bottom right. So on the top, you would see what's called a flight training device, which is non-movement. That's, again, a way to get the procedures down pat before we move into the full flight simulator on the bottom right. So again, these are the exact same multi-million-dollar full motion machines that airlines use to train their pilots. And the BFC IATPL program is quite unique in that it's the only one in Canada to use these top-level simulators, the only one. So on top of their actual normal sessions, students are also required to attend observation sessions. And again, that's just in order to get the most exposure possible to the procedures and to the aircraft itself. All right, and here you can see just some examples of the documents that are used in the 737 syllabus. Some of our what we call scripts for the simulator sessions, some weight and balance items, and some study guide items for the students. So just an example or some examples of the things that are used in that portion of the training. So let's talk now about some program highlights. The IATPL diploma program gives a huge benefit in that it allows students to write the ATPL exams as part of the program, and therefore automatically obtain Transport Canada's airline transport pilot license accreditation upon completion of the regulatory flight hour requirements. So that's 1,500 total flight hours. And this is what is sometimes called a frozen ATPL. Outside of IATPL programs, as Sydney mentioned, these exams, the two ATPL exams, the SAMRA and the SARON, written at Transport Canada, those exams can't be written until the candidate has at least 750 hours of experience. But in our program, they're already written once around the 250-hour mark. And so having those exams written allows the student to be a co-pilot on a multi-crew aircraft right after finishing the program. It's a huge advantage, especially in an industry, again, where seniority is a big deal. And the industry is moving very quickly at this time. Lots of hiring, as we mentioned earlier. And so it is important to get in as quickly as possible. After completion of the program, candidates will have 5 years to actually fulfill the requirements of the 1,500-hour ATPL license. And this is kind of why it's kind of termed this frozen ATPL. Some more highlights. We talk about advanced subjects that aren't taught in other IATPL programs, like advanced navigation systems, flight management systems, or FMS, airborne weather radar and how to use it, and crew resource management, or CRM, which I've already mentioned a couple times. Students will also gain credentials and skills that are sought after by the airlines. And again, being airline employees ourselves and airline pilots ourselves, we know what the airlines are looking for. Multi-crew cooperation skills are very important. Leadership and managerial skills also really important, because eventually we all want to be captains and we need leadership and managerial skills to do that. And so we begin to teach those throughout the program. Situational awareness, another really important skill for pilots to have, decision-making and risk management, and again, CRM or crew resource management. You can see how important it is because it comes up, it has come up already so many times, something that we use on a daily basis. We also provide solid experience for employment interviews. Confidence and experience for simulator evaluations, which are sometimes part of the airline interview process. Students that come out of this program will feel comfortable doing that because they'll have already been in a simulator. So it won't be something that is as nerve-wracking as it might be for people coming out of other programs who haven't seen that type of simulator before. Also, they'll have knowledge of airline policies and procedures, a much higher level of knowledge, and that gives the confidence in an interview or a simulator evaluation for a student. When it comes to instruction, I already made a quick mention of this, but all of the AeroCourse instructors are highly qualified instructors and airline pilots with thousands of hours of flight experience. And so again, this is very unique in an IATPL program. It means we not only have a wealth of real-world experience to pass on to our students, but also that, again, we know what airlines are looking for right now. And our instructors have some different backgrounds, but a wealth of experience regardless. We have simulator and ground school instructors, training and check pilots, as well as some managerial backgrounds, for example, in flight operations. In terms of the program review, this program is recognized under the Ontario Private Career Colleges Act. The course length is about 20 months, and ground school hours total approximately 800 hours. And that includes over 250 hours of the advanced ground school, and that's the portion that I've talked to you about today. in the IATPL, you're eligible to write those Transport Canada ATPL exams within the program and therefore qualify for the frozen ATPL that I talked about earlier. You get 36 hours of experience in an advanced simulator, which again is a huge benefit when employers are looking at you. Experience in a multi-crew environment, also a huge benefit. And the flight training in itself is highly structured into 7 different flying phases. And that's not just the advanced portion, but from the very beginning, from 0 hours all the way up to the simulator training. Okay, so now that we've covered the program syllabus and highlights, I want to circle back to the components of effective flight crew performance that we saw earlier. So we can look at the components in the form of what's called the Swiss cheese risk analysis model. And maybe some of you have heard this before. It's not, it is used in aviation, but it's also used in other faculties as well. So in this model, threats like, for example, changing weather conditions or perhaps technical issues are mitigated using these various levels or layers of defense. And those are the components that we talked about, like airline operational procedures, aircraft systems, and CRM that form the basis of the course. And so in this model, they are likened to pieces of Swiss cheese. You can see they have little holes in them, and the holes in the cheese represent deficiencies in the layers of defense. And those are bound to happen. No layer is perfect. But when they line up, it could lead to an incident. So if you want to click forward once, Sydney. So what we want to see is more knowledge. The more knowledge the students have in these subjects, the more we can fill the training gap that we talked about earlier, and the more layers of defense they have to deal with threats effectively. You can click forward one more time. And we can block some of those threats with the layers of safety that we build through the program. And if you want to click forward. So a graduate of our program several years ago put it best when he said that it gave him the knowledge and ability to make better decisions. And that really is our goal here. Again, safety-oriented professional pilots coming out of the program who are able to make better decisions. All right, so to illustrate just how much skill our graduates come out of this program with, I'd like to show you a couple of videos, and we're going to compare the two. So the first is a video of Rick taking off in the Boeing 767. And so in this video, you'll hear the various standard calls that both pilots are making when flying a commercial aircraft. So very high level professionalism here. So let's take a look. Oh, and I'm not sure if we have the sound, Sydney.
Sydney, you have to make the sound available.
To 7,000 feet, no turns below 3,600. Dilute the engine at 90 and me, we're going to go 330 up to 5,400 feet.
Roger that, clear to line up only, clear right.
Clear left. Right? The run up?
60%, yep. It's a release to reflect 59.2. So we have a release for.
Excellent, thank you. set?
All set.
Twenty-five, why don't you let them know we're ready to go?
Canada 009, ready to go 35 left. 24.5 to the aircraft, takeoff runway 35 left, Air Canada 009.
And one.
Trust set.
Roger.
V1, rotate. Positive ring.
Gear up. Hell now. VNAV, climb thrust, command center. N1, VNAV speed.
Roger. Purchase holds Air Canada 009, 5.2.
All right, so now you've seen kind of the motions and the calls of a takeoff at the airline level. And if we click forward, we'll take a look
It's gonna be V1161.
previous graduate
It's gonna be
last simulator session in the program. And you'll notice that their calls won't be exactly the same because it's a different aircraft and different airline procedures, but you'll see the similarities and you'll also see how much they've learned about operating a complex two-crew aircraft.
Knots?
Check.
V1. Rotate.
Gear up.
Coming up. Heading. Alt cell.
Lap 0, find power after takeoff checks.
Flap 0. Power.
Autopilot engaged.
Check.
So again, even though the aircraft and procedures aren't exactly the same, when we compare the two videos, you can see a really impressive level of proficiency from our students over a relatively short amount of time. It is very, very impressive. Having been in there myself to watch the students in the simulator, I'm always very impressed with how far they have come. It takes a lot of hard work and studying, but it's always really impressive and fun to watch.
Jess, if I could just add a couple of things to that. As Jess said, the level of competence of these two young pilots that just went through the program is astounding, considering that they both never flew this airplane before. They never flew anything close to this size, and the professionalism that they dictated. They learned the SOPs, they learned the systems, and they both excelled and went straight through to Jazz. And that's the whole story behind the IATPL program. As just said, the IATPL it fills that training gap, and it gives them, any candidate, a leg up once they start at the airline, and that's the whole thing behind it. Additionally, it's also the dedication that they spend the time to learn. What we see a lot of students, and not in this program, but we see a lot of students all across Canada that all they want to do is pass the written Transport Canada written exams, and that's wrong. They just want to find it the easiest way. This isn't high school. This is not university. This is real life, and we try to instill at every level of the training practical examples of what is required to maintain a professional, safe operation. And we see this, we hear it from our candidates which are out flying, that they are contributing in a major way. And that's why they excel at the airlines. So that's all I really wanted to say. Back to you, Jess.
All right. I think we've just lost the presentation. Stand by. There we go. Back at it.
Sorry, guys, my connection cut out there.
Okay, we can click forward. All right, so as we wrap up, I just wanted to touch a little more on the future demand for pilots. Kathy talked a little bit about this earlier in reference to Canadian demand, and here we're going to look at worldwide demand. So obviously COVID-19 caused a significant dip in travel. Maybe that's even an understatement for a while, but travel is nearly back to pre-pandemic levels, and forecasts like the one you can see here, published by our training partner, CAE, in 2020 show that there is still going to be a significant increase in demand for pilots over the next several years. So by 2029, they forecast 484,000 active pilots worldwide, and that'll require an additional 45,000 business jet pilots and an additional 219,000 airline pilots. And that need takes into account both industry growth that's projected, as well as replacing a large number of retiring pilots. And the reason why they can do this with such accuracy is that pilots are actually forced to retire at age 65. So we can click forward. And what that means is a total worldwide demand for 264,000 new pilots needed over the next 10 years, with 65,000 new pilots needed in North America alone. So if we click forward, despite what we saw through the pandemic, the long-term commercial aviation outlook remains strong. And if you want to check out the demand outlook in more detail, you can visit the CAE website at the URL shown below. Or if you Google CAE Pilot Demand Outlook 2020, you'll be able to find that and check it out for yourself in more detail. All right, so for the next slide, I'm going to pass the mic back to Kathy, who's going to introduce some of the really exciting opportunities that our IATPL graduates have access to.
Thank you, Jess. Yes, so this is very exciting. So one option for our graduates is the Jazz Pathways program. And this is the criteria that the airline is looking for. So 80% average on Transport Canada exams. They'll do an interview for first officer positions, and the applicant should have 250 hours. The two awards that are provided on the at the Wings banquet annually is the Jazz Aviation Pathway Award for Professionalism, and then we have the Professionalism and Diversity Award as well.
In addition to the Jazz program, we also have the Destination Porter program. So this is similar to the Jazz program. However, Porter is typically looking for our graduates to have higher hours before getting that first officer position there. But what Porter does offer is a mentorship program. So Porter offers this to all applicants who apply to the Destination Porter program, not necessarily just the top 1 or 2 IATPL graduates. And you would get paired with a Porter airline pilot to help provide guidance into career development. So this is someone who's been in your shoes a few years back and knows what it feels like to go through the flight training process and the job application process. And they just help provide some pointers and tips, as well as they might potentially provide a reference for you when you reach the hours that Porter is looking for to apply. So once you've met that 500 flight hours, you would have an option to interview for first officer position at airlines. Porter also does offer a scholarship award, which is awarded at each Wings Banquet graduation ceremony, which typically happens annually in the spring. And this is referred to as the Porter Star Award. So the recipient of this Porter Star Award will be guaranteed for a first officer position at Porter. And do we have Francis to talk about?
I'm here. Hi, everybody.
Awesome.
So I will speak to the Sunwing partnership, which was recently signed between Sunwing Airlines and the Brampton Integrated Program. I'm in a unique situation where I both am heavily involved in the integrated program with AeroCourse at Brampton. I'm also a training captain at Sunwing Airlines, and Sunwing saw the potential of the program, and they're actually the first major airline in Canada to have an established what's called cadet program, which is based heavily on systems that have been going on for many years in Europe and Asia, and that where they bring very low time pilots and train them specifically to go on their aircraft. And Sunwing saw the program, the curriculum, and the way it's being taught at Brampton, and they recently signed this agreement, giving an opportunity to the graduates of the integrated program to interview and potentially get on with Sunwing Airlines as a first officer. So just going right on to the 737-800, actually. Now, the graduates still have to go through the Sunwing training program, but they absolutely have a huge advantage, even over experienced pilots who are interviewed and then subsequently hired with Sunwing. We had one graduate from last year's program who excelled, and he's a first officer now at Sunwing, just flying the line like the rest of us. And it's pretty exciting. And I am really looking forward to even this year's graduates and future graduates progressing into the Sunwing program, and I'll get to see them there as I'm doing my real job, so to speak, in addition to the training on the integrated program. So they also have a couple of scholarships that they are offering to graduates to help fund the academic side of things. So if they do really well in the program, Sunwing has offered these opportunities as well. Pretty exciting. I'm excited.
I'm excited as well. Thank you, Francis. So I'll just wrap up with some final points here about the application process. So I'll just go over this briefly, as I have much information available to us online about how to apply. But you would submit an application online to our website, bramptonflightcentre.com. It's a $100 application fee along with several documents. So the most important being your Transport Canada Category 1 medical. If you don't have the medical certificate received in hand, you can upload some type of evidence showing that you've completed the appointment. As well, I would like you to upload transcripts, either from high school or if you have any additional education, as well as 2 letters of reference from the current year, as well as a current resume, and a 2 to 3 page narrative outlining sort of yourself and your intentions and hopeful career progression in the aviation industry. And finally, we require 0.5 hours of flight training experience, or what Kathy referred to at the beginning of the presentation as an introductory flight. So you can book this through Brampton Flight Centre or any other flight school. It's really meant for you to just get exposure to being in a small aircraft and making sure that you're comfortable and excited about joining the program. So once I receive your application, I will invite you to come for an interview and a quiz that would be scheduled by myself via email. And the quiz assesses candidates' basic math, English, and Canadian geography understanding. And I'll turn it over to Kathy to just quickly touch on the cost and financial aspects of the program.
For sure. So as you can see on the screen, we have the cost. This is without tax. This is not a lump sum that you pay. We have tuition installments, which is probably every second month, and then it's pay as you fly. So when the weather's bad and you're not flying, you're not paying the school any money. So students have to budget for spending more money throughout the summer months, when you're going to be doing a lot of flying versus the winter. Recently, you probably noticed we had a lot of fog, a lot of rain, so there was not as many flights, so it's a little easier on the budget. Unfortunately, we are not OSAP eligible, so students typically need to secure a loan unless they've been working for a few years and have saved some money. Parents are using their RESPs. Educational lines of credit are also another option, or a loan with a cosigner, which might be a parent. And scholarships are typically handed out at the end of the program. And in our photo here to the left, you can see Captain Francis Yanusi, who is just speaking to you, and Damon Crane on the right, who is a graduate of the IATPL program from just last year. So it gives you a really good idea of how accelerated and how fantastic this program is to get students into those airline positions. Our next program start date will be July 3rd. We started our applications January 2nd, and we're going to close them on the 14th of March. We typically accept 30 students. We do usually have a high rate of applications, just generally speaking, and we find that by having a smaller class, we're able to assist the students and really focus on giving them the resources that they need to be successful in the program. Thank you for your time, everyone.
So I'll end us off on some contact information. So if you do have any questions about the IATPL or college program, please send me an email or give me a phone call. You can reach me at admissions@bramfly.com, or you can call me at 905-838-1400 extension 248. If you're interested in the self-paced program, you can contact my colleague, Rita Lombardi. She's our flight training administrator. She can be reached at info@Bramfly or calling the same number at extension 228. So we thank you for your time this evening. I appreciate the turnout and the patience with the few technical errors I had. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time. And I will stick around for any questions, whether you want to unmute yourself or ask them in the chat. Please feel free to send any questions our way.
What about the international students who can apply for the Brampton Flight Centre?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat that?
It's what about the international students who are applying for the ATPL program?
So currently we are closed to international students. So we do currently have a wait of students waiting to get started on training. So something we've done to sort of meet the needs of our current students is put a pause on accepting new students at the moment. So we do not have a opening date at this moment for international students. We hope it will be by the summertime, but I cannot give you a decision at this time. But I would encourage you to check our website under the international students section for any updates on that international student acceptance.
Okay.
I think, Sydney, one thing that you could mention is that all the licensing requirements and everything is on the website, right? The link for that.
Definitely. Certainly. So I'm definitely going to be posting a recording of this. So I have had a couple questions in the chat if we're going to be able to get a recording. So I will send out an email within the week or two just with this recording, as well as helpful links, like Rick said, to some licensing documents. I have a generic document that sort of outlines the licensing requirements in Canada and sort of the licensing progression. So that's a very helpful document that I'm going to link to in that email as well. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Rick?
I just see the common question in the chat So the one about university, you're in university taking economics, that's fine. Contrary to popular belief, where many schools out there saying you need physics, you need high-level math, that's not what you need as a pilot. You need well-balanced education. Having a university or a college diploma is always a benefit, like in any type of job, but it doesn't matter what it's in. All the airlines look for is that you're capable of learning. That's the big thing that they want. So economics or anything along those lines is fine. So yeah, you don't need physics or math and all this other stuff because we just don't use it as pilots. Not really. Let's put it that way. Very basic stuff.
And I've had a couple questions for the price breakdown. I do have a detailed price breakdown sheet that I would be happy to email anybody. So if you would like to send me an email, again, admissions@bramfly.com. It's posted on the screen on this left-hand side. Send me an email and I would be happy to share that price breakdown with you. But just remind you of the cost of the program. It's approximately $93,000 for the IATPL and approximately $73,000 for the college program.
Scott, do you remember what the minimum age is for a medical? I think it's 16, isn't it?
It's 14 for the medical, but you can't hold a PPL until you're 16.
16, yeah. Okay.
I see a question here about getting the presentation as a PDF. Unfortunately, we're unable to do that, but the presentation, as mentioned earlier, is being recorded. So that will be posted on the Brampton website as well, if you'd like to review it.
And to answer the question, can we join IATPL after self-paced? Yes, we can accommodate a certain amount of experience into both the college and IATPL programs. So the IATPL is great that we can accommodate somebody who has their full private pilot license. So if you do apply to the program and you have your full license, you would be starting at an advanced phase of the flight training. You would still be attending all of the ground school, including the private pilot license, but as we've covered in this presentation, the ground school is delivered to a much deeper level of understanding than the standard program. So it's likely that you're going to be exposed to new material in even just the private pilot license, even if you're coming in with your private license. So you would complete your flight training at an accelerated pace. And there would be a discount in regard to how much money you pay for the flight training because your private pilot license would be achieved already. So we would accept students who come in from any flight school with their private pilot license. I would say having a background with some flight experience is definitely an advantage to the program. It would help you stay ahead and be familiar with the topics for sure.
I also see a question about how many times are you allowed to take the Category 1 medical. The medical it's not like a test. You have to meet a certain standard. So when you go through your medical with the medical examiner, if they have questions on one particular thing, they will ask you to go get a specialist report on it if there's a question on it. In most cases, as long as you have basic health, good health, then you shouldn't have a problem with your Cat 1 medical. The airlines tend to do a more detailed medical, but as long as you can hold a medical, they can't decline you from being hired under the human rights right now as it stands. So yeah, it's just a matter of if they can, if they ask you to get extra tests or something just to make sure that everything is fine. That's really how that works. One of the other things that I always mention to everybody is there's a lot of schools out there, and I say not all IATPL programs are created equal. There's a lot of people make a lot of promises. But so if you're looking at other programs, make sure you do your research, find out who the instructors are. find out what type of simulator they're doing it in. They all say that's the best, most modern simulator. But when just mentioned, one of the big things we've always done, and we said it from the very beginning, we're not going to do this program unless we teach pilots how to program a flight management computer, because the whole world revolves around that flight management computer. And that's what is so important. And that's what we teach in the flight training device, is how to program the flight management computer along with all the standard operating procedures calls. And that's what's so important. And you learn how to operate in a 2-crew or more environment, because that is vitally important to keep aircraft safe. And these are all these non-technical items that we look at passing along to students with, our excellent experienced instructors. So I'm quite proud of the program. Jess and Francis have done an amazing job putting it all together. So along with Scott and his team, I think we're pretty proud of this whole program, right from zero time starting on the private rate up until they graduate the IATPL.
Mike, if you
And
don't
we're very
mind me
proud of
also,
our.
sorry, go ahead, Jess.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that the other thing you can add is the simulator that's being used for the IATPL program is the simulator that Sunwing and many other airlines are actually using. So these students who are making it into the simulator will be walking right in after a Sunwing crew comes out from their recurrent training. It's not a sim that's specific for just integrated programs. This is the one.
And again, that is very unique. We are the only IATPL program in Canada using a level D simulator. So quite special that, yeah.
Just to clarify a question I'm seeing a couple times in the chat, we accept a total of 30 students to both diploma programs, so both the college and IATPL. I would say about 75 to 80% of those are the IATPL program, with the few others being in the college program. So definitely the popular option, what most people are looking for, is the integrated IATPL program with a couple others in the college. So it does vary year to year, but in my experience, it's been approximately 75 to 80% IATPL students. And there's another question: where do most IATPL graduates end up if not Porter Jazz or any other major airlines? So not all of the students will get direct entry to the airlines. That would be our goal, but that might not be the reality depending on the hiring of your graduation year. If that's the case, there's several other job opportunities. Scott covers several at the beginning of the presentation, including flight instructor, small carrier, regional carriers. There's several pilot opportunities. So I do encourage everyone to do your research and see the types of career progression and opportunities you can take before getting to last year, how many people got a job? So we had only 8 graduates last year. So that was a small year because of COVID. They started during the pandemic. 2 of those students got direct entry to airline careers. I'm not sure about the others, whether or not they're in aviation related jobs, but we're definitely proud of the 2 who got direct entry. Is it better to do the PPL first and then IATPL onward? You definitely can start in a self-paced program and accomplish your PPL, but the IATPL is designed for someone to come in with 0 hours of experience. So it's really, the choice is up to you, but we do allow for both levels of experience for the IATPL as well as college program.
I'd add, Sydney, that it's actually better to go through the IATPL direct, because they limit the number of hours that you're allowed to credit towards the IATPL if you have a full private pilot license. It's one of those Transport Canada rules that we'd like to see change. We think it's not very applicable to what we're doing. We're we're thinking we're going to see a kind of a big change down the road in this professional program where they'll actually drop the private pilot and you just go straight into the commercial pilot license. And the reason is that the private pilot license is very close to the commercial pilot license. If you look at the standards and whatnot, it's just a higher level of standard, but you cover all the same material. So I believe Transport's looking at just combining it into one, and you basically do the commercial, the multi-IFR, and the IATPL. And as we said, it's a very structured program right from the beginning. And that's what makes it so valuable to the airlines, because each candidate is learning to be in a structured environment all the way through, and that's what makes them excel. Once they get to even a small airline, they do very, very well. So in any event, many of our graduates, they all get jobs and they're all through. I mean, we have graduates now that graduated, I think, during COVID less than 2 years ago, and they're flying at Jazz. Some of them are gone to Air Canada and WestJet. So we're seeing a huge uptick, and that's one thing we didn't really say. Now's the time. In this whole industry, you see a peaks and valleys of hiring. I've never seen a peak like this ever, and I was flying for 47 years, so believe me when I say I've never seen a peak like it is now, and it's going to continue, as Sydney pointed out earlier, that the shortage is going to be around for a number of years to come. So this is the time.
I see a question here: for a career such as bush pilot or other remote jobs, which pathway would you recommend? The integrated program, or IATPL, is going to be your best bet, no matter which type of job you want in the aviation industry. It will give you the experience that you require, and it will get you into the industry faster, no matter where you want to end up. So it's the type of learning, that structured learning, the experience, the crew resource management, the safety focus, all of that stuff. That's really important that we focus on in the advanced training. That's going to help you no matter where you end up, no matter what type of job you end up with. And then I also see a question about the typical pay for entry-level first officers. That varies depending on where you're going, and which airline job or which job you are doing. So you can find a lot of pay tables online. If you're looking for a specific airline, that's what I would recommend, is to go online and look for those pay tables. But I will say that unfortunately, the typical entry-level pay at the very beginning of your career will not be what it is at the end, that's for sure. We're working to change that as a group as Canadian pilots. We're all working to change that. But at the moment, yes, you will not be making huge money at the very beginning of your career. That will come as you gain experience, but specific pay tables can be found online.
Biggest learning hump you face and struggle the most is just adjusting to the initial speed and accelerated of the program. Ground school, soft sort of where you just ground school right from day one, as well as quizzes start within the first week of the programs. So you sort of hit the ground running, and we use the term sort of drinking fire it's a lot at you all at once to the private pilot license. So about 4 months into the program, completing both your flight training as well as ground school and written exams successfully, I would say that's a great indication that you'll complete the program in good standing. I'm not sure what you mean by rule about the PPL to IATPL. If you don't mind clarifying that question. Down to anyone who emails and do send me an email request if you would like to see that price breakdown. Yashar, if you would like to unmute yourself, feel free to ask your question.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Fine, thank you so much, ma'am. So I do have a question. First of all, I want to see does the courses of like the college from if I want to start from the PPL, does it have any semester or something? So like or whenever I do the enrollment, I can join the course.
So it only starts once per year. So there's not sort of a halfway point that you can drop in at. Everyone needs to have started the program from day one. So the only time you can apply for the program is up until March 4th to be accepted to the July start date.
Oh, so the course is gonna start on July.
Correct.
Oh, because so my question is because I have passed 1 year of a CPL IR courses back in my home country in Iran, but due to that I was 16 years old on that time, I didn't get my licenses and my ground school licenses, and now I'm here as an international student in a high school in Century Public School in Richmond Hill. But even though here I'm running an aviation club, I do have some reference letter from them, but I think our school gonna get done and I can receive my diploma by July, maybe July 10th. So is that gonna make a problem?
You can send me an email and we can set up a phone call to sort of discuss your personal circumstances on a private call. So send me an email, admissions@Brampton, and we can meeting and just sort of talk about what your application process would look like.
Okay, sure. Even though so our school, because of the aviation club, we are coming to your college and the Brampton Flight Centre for a group tour on I think April 12th. So maybe we can have a in-person chat too.
That would be lovely. Yeah, send me an email.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Question.
Yeah, and just keep in mind that the applications for this July do close on March 14th.
Hi, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I understand the cost breakdown of the program, but I have to ask though, say midway through the program after like for example PPL, CPL multi-IFR, if we're unable to get a payment on time or just unable to afford the training halfway, how would that work? Would we be just like booted or just are we able to continue? Like
Hi there. You were asking about if a student were to be in the program and then not be able to afford it halfway through.
yeah.
So unfortunately, that's where the pre-planning comes in and the budgeting. So if a student was to suddenly have no money, they wouldn't be able to stay in the program. It is an accelerated program and it does have a hard deadline. And unfortunately, if someone had to leave it because they had to go back to work, you would essentially be going self-paced.
Are you able to continue it like the following year or what? How would that work?
We would look at it as a case-by-case situation, because if you were more than halfway through the program, it wouldn't make sense to charge you tuition payments again to go through ground school again, which you've already achieved, because I would assume you say you already had your PPL. I wouldn't expect you to pay more money to sit and redo those classes. So it would be a very one-on-one meeting to see what training you've accomplished and what makes the most sense.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Did you have another question, Yashar? No, maybe the hand's still raised. Okay, is there any other questions before we end the call for this evening?
I just had a quick question, sorry, Sydney. What's
Yes.
like a typical day for an ITPL person who's joining the course? So like what time does it usually start, and like what's the
Yeah, I
day-to-day like?
covered that at one point of the presentation, but you would be scheduled for a flight sometime in the morning. Ground school is scheduled in the afternoon. So we do recommend that you study and stay at the flight school between your flight and ground school in the afternoon. That does depend on what portion of the program you're in. For example, when we're working with AeroCourse on the advanced airline training, you're not completing flight training at all because your flights would be completed at that point, and you're in ground school sort of full time. So 7-8 hour days of ground school, potentially not every day of the week. It's typically only a few days of the week. More full days of ground school versus in the beginning portions of the program, you're maybe doing 1 or 2 flights before going to ground school in the afternoon.
Got it. So like what time usually do we start for our
It can be
flights
as early as 6:30,
Okay.
or you can land as late as midnight, depending on what portion of the program you're in.
Okay.
So we
Thank
do
you.
ask that your availability is sort of full time due to sort of the time structure of flights. So in the summer, we like to maximize the time that we're flying as much as possible.
Thank you.
No
And
worries.
actually, that is actual good training, because the airlines, or if you fly for the airlines and that's what you want to do, it's 24/7. Especially
You could be
doing
flying a red eye,
overseas.
right? So you never
Oh
know.
yeah, you could be overseas flying. It's 12, 14 hours. So yeah, your sleep schedule's kind of messed up, and you're going to be flying Christmas or holidays, whatever the case may be. It's all part of the scheduling and it's based on your seniority when you get hired. The more seniority you have, the better chances of bidding your schedule to get time off as you request.
Certainly. And
Thank you
just
for
to
that.
expand on that more, Rick, we don't typically accommodate for any breaks within this program. So it is a full-time, highly structured program. Unlike college or universities where you have a scheduled sort of reading break and time off in the summer, this is a full-time 6 to 7 day commitment for a full 20 months. So as you've seen, you get your license within an extremely accelerated time frame, but with that accelerated nature comes the heavy commitment and time spent within the program, whether that's flight training, whether that's preparing for flights by being in the books, or preparing for your examinations. It's definitely a heavy time commitment, and I can't stress that enough.
So would you suggest prepare for some of the courses, or just the basic principles of flight before you join the program, just to get the hands
That
on?
would definitely be an advantage. Everything will be covered in the program, but especially if you're not coming in with a background of aviation, you can definitely purchase the books beforehand and get into them. We use From the Ground Up, which is sold in our pilot shop for the private pilot and commercial pilot licensed ground school. So you're more than welcome to purchase those ahead of time, and those are good for either the college or IATPL or self-paced programs. I think a lot of other flight schools use that as well. And that would be a great way to start getting exposed to some of the material before starting the program. The other things you could do to get ahead would be starting to study for your radio operator certificate. So you need a certificate to be able to communicate on the radio in the aircraft. So completing that examination is something that we do in the program. However, it does set yourself ahead if you do have that coming into the program. as well as the other thing you can prepare for is writing what's called the P-STAR. So that is actually a quiz on Canadian air regulations. So we have a resource available on our website linked, or you can just Google P-STAR examination preparation and a Transport Canada document will come up. And that's a bank of around 200 questions, multiple choice questions, and those would be on the examination. So we'll pull 50 of those 200 questions for our P-STAR exam.
Okay, thank you. Well, I guess I'll see you on Thursday.
Yes.
I actually have one last question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know it was already mentioned regarding the PPL, but can I just get a further clarification on how much you recognize the license? Like, because I know like with having a PPL, that the Rock A, P-STAR, the grad school, they're already done and stuff. So how much would that be recognized if I joined the ATPL or something, and how much money would that take off for?
Yeah, so in terms of flight training, you would start, the IATPL follows what Jessica said, 7 phases of flight training. So if you were coming in with your private pilot license, you would start at what's called modified phase 3. So that's a short phase to just get you used to Brampton's runways, our circuit patterns, all of that, before you start into phase 4, which is the new material of commercial pilot license and night rating. So in terms of flight training, you would be starting at that accelerated point. In terms of the money that would be credited, so we've quoted the private pilot license at approximately 19,000, if I'm not mistaken, on my price breakdown. So you would subtract that 19,000 from the subtotal, the grand total of 93,000. In terms of ground school, however, even though you would be completed with a PPL license, ground school would be repeated through this program. And like I said before, although it's a repetition, you're likely get exposed to a lot more new material in this private pilot license ground school. For example, our self-paced ground school for the private pilot license is only 45 hours of ground school, whereas in the IATPL, it's over 150 hours of instruction for the private pilot license alone. So that just kind of gives you an idea of the sort of depth of information we're going into in these ground school sessions. So it's a good way to get used to the accelerated nature of the program before you get exposed to the commercial pilot license ground school a couple months into the program. And in terms of the hours of experience that we can credit towards the program, we aren't able to credit all of the hours of experience to the program, as Rick sort of alluded to. It's something we're trying to have change, but in terms of your total hours, we can only credit, I believe, 35 hours towards the program. A private pilot license is a minimum of 45 hours, meaning that everyone will obviously have more than 35 hours of training that cannot be credited towards the program. Those total hours, and I can't stress this enough, are never lost. They are always going to count towards your total pilot hours. It's just that we cannot count them as credited and completed within the program. We can only count the first 35 hours of your license as completed within the program. So with that restriction in mind, that is why starting the programs from day one and hour 1 in the program is why it's most beneficial, because all of your training would be credited, whereas some of your hours are not credited towards the program if you are coming in with a private license, as well as the fact you would be paying again for private pilot license ground school.
I just would want to add, Sydney, too, that that's not unique to the Brampton Flight Centre or this particular IATPL. It's based on Transport Canada's requirements, as Rick mentioned. So that's something that applies to all IATPL programs and the crediting of the PPL times. So it's not unique to this program, it's Canada-wide.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And our price breakdown, that 93,000 we feel is as accurate as we can get it. We've included all the miscellaneous fees that we can think of in this price breakdown. The only thing that wouldn't be included in that 93,000 is the cost of repeated flights. So sometimes a student might need to repeat a flight for whatever reason. It might be due to not having the weather to complete the second sort of exercise they were supposed to cover in their flight, or it might be because you've lost currency, you need to go up for another flight to sort of refresh yourself on an exercise before you can go and practice it by yourself, for example. So the cost of these repeated flights are not included in that $93,000. So what I've been telling to applicants is to keep a buffer of approximately $5,000 for any repeated flights. And mind you, you might not need to do any of that $5,000, or if you're repeating multiple flights, you could go beyond that. That's just sort of a buffer to just give you sort of a general idea, but we do feel the 93 is very accurate. We've included all of the costs of completing the examinations, all of the costs of the licensing fees, all of the equipment you would need, including textbooks, headsets, several items. So it is a very comprehensive breakdown.
Sorry, Sonia, I just had a quick question again, if you don't mind.
Yep.
About the hours. So usually the court that we have is only for 200 hours, right? So we usually need 250 hours. So that 50 hours is going to be extra on top of the
Correct.
fees that
Yes.
are.
So to build up to 50 hours, it would be additional time. I would say majority of our graduates, at least the licenses I've signed off, have been at least around the 230 hour point. And if you were to get that first officer position, it would be very easy for yourself to complete some rental flights to meet that 250 hour point.
Okay. So usually, for getting those job offers, you need 250 hours, right? So that's what it's basically.
To get into the airlines, it's a 250 hour minimum hour requirement. So we do encourage our students to do rental flights, and it's just a good way to build your hours and get more comfortable in the airplane before you're heading off to whatever career it is you're pursuing.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that is most of the questions. We're going to wrap up the presentation shortly, but if there are any other questions, feel free to send me an email. You can just reply to the email that you received the link for this evening. I'll also be sending out, again, an email with a link to this seminar recording, as well as some other helpful documents for anyone interested in applying to the program. So thank you again, everyone, for your time this evening. I appreciate your patience and your time for coming out. So thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.